Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for the first 5G-MOBIX webinar. My name is Kelly Panayotidi and I am Communications Officer from ICCS. Today's topic is cooperative, connected and automated mobility use cases for initial deployment of 5G technological innovations. Before we get started, I would like to inform you about the process. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions by typing them into the questions box of your control panel, and then we will collect them and address them during the questions answer session at the end of all presentations. Now, I am pleased to introduce my colleague, Dr. Vasilis Sourlas. Vasilis received his diploma degree from the Computer Engineering and Informatics Department from University of Patras, Greece in 2004, and a master's degree in Computer Science and Engineering from the same department in 2006. In 2013, he received his PhD from Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering, University of Thessaly, Volos, Greece. In January 2015, he joined the Electronic and Electrical Engineering Department of UCL London to pursue his highly prestigious Marie Curie IF Fellowship. His main interests are in the area of computer networking and future internet architectures. His research has been awarded the Best Paper Awards in 3 international conferences: IFIP Networking 2015, IEEE Landman 2016, and ACM-MOBIX 2016. Since October 2017, he is with the ICCS iSense Group, working as a senior researcher in EU research projects. He is also a member of the IEEE and the Technical Chamber in Greece. Vasilis, you may start.
I guess you can see now my screen.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. And I guess that you can see the first slide of the presentation. I will be very short so to have more time for the experts of the use cases and the 5G-MOBIX to give some more details on the project. First of all, welcome to the first of our webinar series. The project is regards about driving forward connecting automated mobility and is part of the 5GPP initiative. The 5GPP, as you might know, it's the 5G public-private partnerships, which is a joint initiative between the European Commission and the European ICT industry. 5G-MOBIX is a relatively large consortium, as also Francois, the project manager, will tell you later. It consists of 55 partners from 10 countries, from the EU and Turkey, China and Korea, representing the European ICT industry. It involves 2 cross-border sites and 6 local sites, which are assisting in our cross-border experiments and advancements using the 5G technology. The project will examine the implication of 5G and its role in the future of autonomous driving. This is, as I mentioned, the first of our webinars where you become familiar with the use cases of the project. And follow-up webinar very shortly will provide most probably the cross-border issues that we have identified during the first year of the project. Here we have all the ways that you can stay in touch with us. You can either visit our website, you can revisit the recording of this first webinar using the link. You can subscribe in our very interesting newsletter, and you can also find us in the Twitter. And as I mentioned earlier, the next webinar will probably take place in the coming November. The agenda, after I will give the floor to the project manager, Francois Fischer from Ertico, and then we will follow up with a short presentation of the 5G-MOBIX very interesting use cases from Dr. Edward from the Aalto University. Afterwards, our technical manager, Kostas from Wings ICT Solutions, will provide shortly the cross-border corridors and the trial sites and the technical activities that take place here, what is the status so far, and what is the roadmap for the next very interesting coming 2 years. And if there is plenty of time, I will have the opportunity to respond to some of the questions. Now, let me introduce our project manager, Mr. Francois Fischer. Mr. Fischer is a senior manager innovation and development at Ertico since 2011, and he leads several EU actions dealing with connected, automated, and driving. He's also the chairman of the IoT W Group Working Group 0.9, which is about smart mobility, and he's also the representative from ERTICO at the 5G PPP. Besides 5G-MOBIX, he's coordinator of the Autopilot H2030 Innovation Action, which is about to progress automated driving with the IoT and the next generation networking, as well as, of course, the coordinator of the 5G-MOBIX innovation. So pretty much Mr. Francois Fischer is very well involved in this CCAM environment. So Mr. Francois Fischer, please, the floor is yours.
Yes, first, good morning to everyone, and thanks a lot to join. See over 60 attendees. I'm very proud and happy to see now the success of this topic for, let's say, the mobility community. I would like very quickly to give an introduction about the project so that you understand the context, and then two experts actually from the University of Helsinki, Aalto, and then our technical coordinator will give more details. I have to show my screen, sorry. Yeah. The topic of 5G-MOBIX, I mean, the main technical topic is about CCAM. So CCAM is an acronym now officially used by the European Commission. There is also CCAM single platform dealing with connected, cooperative, automated mobility. And the main topic of our project is to set up a path of CCAM toward 5G. The path toward 5G is in the specific context of the call, the ICT call named ICT 18, is also specifically focused on cross-border, meaning allowing the deployment of the 5G path on a European highway, which is part of the 5G action plan to be completed by 2025. And as a dedicated issue in this plan, the cross-border issue seems a technical issue, but also financial and cross-member state issue to be addressed specifically, because there are specific problems to be expected compared to the normal deployment of 5G across Europe. So our project will look at mobility and how 5G can progress automated mobility. You know that there are different levels of automation considered by SAE. So SAE has standardized the automation level and the way automation will be implemented in vehicle. Currently, we will have on the market a vehicle, let's say, at level 2. So level 2 vehicles are already available. Level 3 will be maybe available in the next step, and then the ultimate deployment of automation is level 4 and 5. This level 4 and level 5 is what we name high full automation, where driver is out of the loop and there is no need to take control, so the driver is not expected during the phase where the vehicle is under automated mode to intervene in the vehicle, so that the vehicle could be also considered as driverless. So be careful, L5 doesn't mean driverless and L4 with driver. There are a lot of confusion sometimes. The difference between L4 and L5 is L4 is introducing specific domain where we have the full automation, like for instance highway, but when you leave the highway you cannot continue in a full automation, so you need either a driver to step in the vehicle or to take back control. But during the phase where the vehicle is in the automation, of course, the driver is not necessary, or the vehicle can be driverless even in L4. To reach this high level of automation, it is considered, or it is likely considered, let's say, that in-vehicle sensors and the current automated driving system are not enough. There is a need to have a deeper and a more accurate understanding of the driving environment and thus perception of the driving environment. That's why 5G is expected to bridge the gap between the today automated vehicle using their internal sensor and the next generation of automated vehicle using the capability of connectivity to bring far more information about the driving environment, and thus to facilitate the perception of the environment, and also to provide distributed computing of the automated driving. We consider the three performance domain of 5G, which are enhanced machine type communication, enhanced mobile broadband, so more throughput, and also low latency, named URLCC, ultra reliable low latency communication. The objectives, so the main objective of the project is first of all to deploy and test 5G for connected cooperative and automated mobility. But as I mentioned, there is a strong focus on cross-border to solve a cross-border issue with the project. So we are going to run mainly the trial in the context of cross-border, addressing the cross-border issue and ensuring pan-European 5G deployment. And thus, the project is expected also to contribute to the strategic deployment agenda, supporting the 5G action plan, and also the preparation of a CEF project. The CEF is for facilitating the deployment of technology, and there will be a specific CEF project on 5G and also contributing to cross-border deployment. So our project will formulate specific requirement for on 5G to fulfill automated mobility use case, which will be presented later. Establish corridors. There will be 2 corridors. Trial, analyze, because to contribute to the strategic development agenda, we have also to set up such named 5G deployment scenario, provide recommendation also on standardization, spectrum allocation, and also facilitate the scale-up and replication to have the global 5G CCAM adoption in the context of the 5G deployment agenda. These activities are summarized on these slides. On the left side, you see, first of all, there is a need to define use case and define the specific needs from the 5G architecture for those use cases, what we name deployment requirements. Then the second phase of the project will consist of developing the necessary architecture and use cases, and also to deploy, actually integrate and make the trials ready. And then on the later phase, actually carry out the trial to generate data information. This data will be used for evaluation, so there will be evaluation activity to answer certain questions about the KPI, the key performance indicator of 5G. And this evaluation also will help the deployment strategy together with the lessons learned out of the trials. And of course, there will be a lot of dissemination activity because 5G is an emerging technology, need to be also disseminated. As I mentioned, we focus on cross-border trials. So we have 2 main sites crossing borders. One site is in the west of Europe between Spain and Portugal. And we have use cases on the highway and use cases also on a path between two cities being close to each other, crossing the border with the use of automated shuttles, so kind of public transport. And we will use also the project to measure the impact on 5G, also on media and entertainment in buses. On the east side of Europe, we have a border between Greece and Turkey, and this is very interesting because it's an actual border. It's not Turkey is currently not, of course, in the Schengen, and then there is a need to cross the border. So the project will address the cross-border needs for 5G and automated mobility. In particular, we have Ford providing trucks, so we will elaborate on needs for truck platooning, for instance, but also elaborate and develop a tool for the need to facilitate real cross-border assistance for trucks which need to be controlled at the border. So the idea of the project is to facilitate trucks crossing the border, and so we will have some activity together with customs authorities. Additionally, we have local trial sites. The local trial sites are in Europe, in Finland, in France, in Versailles, in Finland, sorry, it's in Helsinki, in Germany, in Berlin, so we have the national trial site in Berlin, and in Netherlands, close to Eindhoven, or then Brainport, the usual location to do CCAM test. Additionally, we have international partners, so non-EU partner. China, they have 2 trial sites, and also Korea having 2 trial sites. Those international partners are very important also to ensure Europe is developing and deploying a global architecture for 5G. This is our partnerships, meaning all the partners of the project. There are numerous partners because, as you see, we have actually 8 sites in Europe and 2 sites in China and Korea. And those partners are representing the different needs in terms of competence, knowledge, and experience for the project. We have been already very successful with dissemination, in the sense we started very early to present views of 5G-MOBIX at a parliament session with member of the European Parliament from Netherlands, because Netherlands is part of our partnership. We have been present at the Turkcell booth in Barcelona Mobile World Congress, at the World Transport Convention in China, at the bi-yearly EU-CAT conference in Brussels, and last but not least, we have organized also a session about 5G and cross-border needs at the European ITS Congress in Eindhoven. And we have been also very successfully represented at the EU CNT in Valencia. We have had a booth with all 3 ICT 18 projects, so we are really working together, 5G Carmen, 5G Coco, and we have won the booth award and organized also a workshop 5G in the area of connected cars. That's all from my side to present an overview of the project and the first overview of the result in terms of dissemination. I think I'm going now to hand over to Edouard to present the next steps. Vasilis or Kelly, you want to introduce?
Yes, Francois, thank you. Now I would like to introduce our next presenter, Dr. Edouard Mutafunga from Aalto University. Edouard is a staff scientist at the Department of Communications and Networks of Aalto University School of Electrical Engineering. In his current position, Edward has multiple roles as a lecturer, innovation agent, postdoc researcher, and project manager in various national and international projects implemented at Aalto University. To that end, his current project roles include serving as project manager for the EU-Korea Primo 5G project, work package leader in Global 5G org project, and co-manager for the Finland test site of the 5G-MOBIX project. His current research interests are on multi-objective optimization of ultra-dense networks, 5G enhancements for critical vertical use cases, and addressing research problems on 5G for underserved areas. Edward, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kelly, and good afternoon to all. I am currently sharing my screen. I hope it's visible.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, thank you. So just switch to presentation mode. Yeah, so I'm going to follow up on the introductory presentation by introducing the 5G-MOBIX use cases overview, specifically focusing on the overall description and methodology used in the use cases addressed in the project. My presentation has three main parts. So initially, I'll try and share the context of the 5G-MOBIX project and how they motivate some of the use cases and the trial activities, which you'll see in this presentation and the one coming after later. Then I'll present the methodological approach used to categorize the use cases addressed in the 5G-MOBIX project. Then finally, we'll close this part of the presentation by trying to highlight the linkages between use cases conducted across the different trial sites. Okay, so a bit of a background and motivation for some of the use cases and trials that you would see presented for 5G-MOBIX. As discussed in the opening presentation, 5G-MOBIX targets to evaluate various automotive use cases that take advantage of 5G technology enhancements, but with a specific focus on cross-border areas. On this slide on the right, you'd see a number of designated cross-border corridors by the European Commission for connected and automated mobility. Out of these various corridors across different member states, you'll also note that some are marked in blue, the rest of the corridors in red. So those marked in blue are those earmarked for initial testing and pre-deployment by various EU-funded projects. So 5G-MOBIX is one of them, but there is also 5G-CROCO and 5G-CAM in the first wave of projects doing CCAM trials in cross-border areas. The cross-border environment presents a number of challenging issues, which would be rather different from those encountered when deploying 5G for CCAM use cases in the urban environments. And these issues, as we'll find out later, could be roughly categorized into the telecoms, security, regulatory, and application perspectives. So from 5G-MOBIX side, the intention is to be able to conduct some experimental activities to be able to test and validate solutions for these different identified cross-border challenges. And it's a distributed testing environment with trial sites located in actual cross-border areas, as we had before, so between Spain and Portugal, and between Greece and Turkey. But these are also supported by a number of trial sites in more controlled local environments in 6 different sites, 4 of them being in Europe and 1 in China and in Korea. So regarding the methodology for 5G-MOBIX use case categorization, so as we note, you have a distributed a trial environment with a large number of use cases. So earlier on, there was already noted a need to be able to have more enhanced synergy between the activities conducted in these different trial sites, both for the local trial sites and the cross-border corridors in which they support. So an approach was adapted within the project to be able to have a categorization of use cases. And this takes into account a number of criteria. First, it has to be categories that encompass all the planned 5G-MOBIX trials in the different trial sites. And there has to be some alignment with the European Commission vision on CCAM in the 5G corridors, in the designated 5G corridors that we saw in the previous slides. And even more importantly, there had to be some alignment with some of the specified use cases in both 5G and automotive industry fora, but also in relevant standards development organizations. So to that end, the categorization that was eventually adopted in the project was actually inspired by one of the specification documents from 3GPP, which is of course the body responsible for specifying and maintaining 5G technology standards. And specifically here we refer to the technical specification 22.186 on the enhancement of 3GPP support for various vehicle to X scenarios. But in addition to this, the project has also made a heavy reference to another 3GPP. This is a technical report at 22.886, which provides a bit more detailed descriptions on the various enhancements of 3GPP to support 5G V2X services. So in this document, there are a number of use cases that have been elaborated and also looking at the potential requirements of each use cases. So the 5G-MOBIX use case more or less try to find some alignment for some of these use cases described in this 3GPP document. And these are the specific use case categories. So there's the advanced driving, where vehicles are able to share drive intentions and local sensor data with other vehicles in close proximity, thus allowing these vehicles to be able to have better coordinated trajectories and maneuvers. Then we have the vehicle platooning category, where vehicles dynamically form a group that travels together with better coordination and safety and efficiency. Then we have the extended sensors category, which involves the exchange of local context data gathered by the vehicle's local sensors, as well as live video transmissions. And this data is not only shared between vehicles, but also with roadside vehicles, with pedestrians, devices, and other V2X application servers to be able to drive different innovative V2X applications. Then we have the remote driving, where a remote driver or some other V2X application is able to remotely operate a vehicle for continuously or then for some limited periods of time. And finally, we have the vehicle quality of service support, where the V2X application has timely notification on unexpected changes in the quality of service and in in the 5G connection in this case, and to be able to adapt accordingly, or then to have the network modify the quality of service it provides to connected vehicle in line with the quality of service needs for the particular V2X application. So with this categorization, we try to identify the various linkages that occur between within different use case categories and across different cross-border and local trial sites. So before providing the linkages, there was a need to create a hierarchy of activities. So in this hierarchical arrangement, we saw those use case categories presented earlier, the 5 categories inspired by the 3GPP standards. And under each category, you have different trial sites contributing user stories. So it's another synonym for use cases in 5G-MOBIX. And these user stories will belong to a particular use case category. So naturally here, the different trial sites working under a common use case category would be expected to have a strong collaboration. And under each user story, it must address a particular cross-border issue and present a solution to that issue. So what you see here is an evaluation scenario of a particular solution to an identified cross-border issue under a specific use case category. And each trial site may have at least one or more evaluation scenarios for a given user story. So what you see here is a matrix that has columns representing the different use case categories and the rows representing the different trial sites. And the first 2 rows are for the cross-border corridor sites, and the remains are for the local trial sites. So under this arrangement, what would be expected is that trial sites working under a particular use case category, for example, advanced driving with Spain and Portugal having a user story related to complex maneuvers, would have very strong collaborations with the user stories carried out in France, Netherlands, and China. So specifically here, it would be expected that the trial sites could contribute directly to the enabling the implementation of the user story in the Spain-Portugal, or then could provide some extended evaluations which are not feasible for various reasons in the cross-border sites. The next presentation coming after this one will present in more detail of these different user stories. And these are just, I was just trying to again emphasize the collaboration between the trial sites and the cross-border sites. Okay, so this is a simple illustration that will end this presentation, illustrating the possible synergy under a particular use case category at the top, and each use case category then with the identified cross-border challenging issues. And each issue would have a number of potential solutions. So some of these solutions, as we see here, might be addressed in a particular user story in one of the 2 cross-border sites, Spain, Portugal, Greece, Turkey. And then at the bottom there, you have the various local trial sites evaluating particular solutions, could be with a focus more on 5G aspects or then on CCAM aspects. So it's a top-down, bottom-up specified synergy for the different experimental activities conducted in both cross-border sites and the local trial sites. So I'll end here and give the control back to the moderator for the next presentation.
Thank you, Edward. Let's go ahead and let me introduce our final presenter, Mr. Konstantinos Trichias from Wings ICT Solutions, the technical coordinator of the 5G-MOBIX project. Konstantinos received his diploma degree in electrical and computer engineering from the University of Patras, Greece in 2008, and his master's degree in electrical telecommunications engineering from the University of Twente, the Netherlands in 2011. He specializes on next-generation heterogeneous wireless and mobile networks, as well as the integration and smooth interoperability of the aforementioned technologies with novel networking paradigms such as SDN, ITS, V2X, and IoT, targeting the successful integration of multiple vertical industries into the 5G ecosystem. He has participated in several national and international research and industry consultancy projects from multiple positions, task and work package lead, technical and quality management, and is currently serving as the technical coordinator of the 5G-MOBIX and as quality manager of the 5G EVE projects. He has served as a 3GPP Run 1 and 2 delegate on behalf of KPN TNO and has 11 patent applications in the area of radio access systems and multiple scientific publications. Kostas, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Kelly, for the nice introduction. Good afternoon to everyone from my side as well. Hopefully you can see my screen, so I'll dive right into it. From my point of view, I'd like to present an overview of the technical activities and present you with our trial sites and cross-border corridors, as well as our roadmap for the coming year. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the focus of the 5G-MOBIX project on cross-border issues. As my previous speakers have pointed out, I'm going to give you a little bit more detail about that, and then give you an overview of the cross-border corridors and trial sites, and then just present a few details about the infrastructure and how it all connects there as we go forward towards our trials that are set to begin in April 2020. So there's a clear focus from our side on cross-border issues. So it's not just about running CCAM pilots under 5G coverage, but we also try to see what's different in executing those trials at the border sites. Our 5G experts and our CCAM experts have convened from all trials of the project and have basically qualified and classified the issues into 4 main categories, which is the broader telecom issues, service and quality continuity issues, security data protection, and automated driving regulations. So different solutions will be progressed for each of these and will be tested in each of our cross-border corridors and trial sites. More specifically, you can see on this slide the original classification of the issues we have. For instance, under telecommunication issues, we have to handle how the inter-PLMN handover would take place, what kind of roaming services have to be in place, potential time differences between countries, etc. We, of course, have to deal with regulatory issues as different countries have different regulations also regarding autonomous driving. Another very important aspect to address is the security and privacy, as we're talking about sharing of data outside of someone's home network. We're talking about strict GDPR rules in effect across Europe, and this have to be handled very carefully. And of course, last but not least, the application issues which any application developer would have to deal with when exchanging this data and when would like to have their service discovery on both countries fully operational. So for each of these issues that we have identified, we have also identified a pool of potential solutions for which some of them in each of these categories will be progressed according to the facilities and potential of each trial site and cross-border corridor. Well, we will try to figure out which of these solutions is the most promising, what are the pros and cons of all of them, and present then to the European Commission a full map both of the issues and the potential and most promising solutions to be applied. So, so far you've gotten a high-level overview, but this is also perhaps a bit more visual. We have the 2 cross-border corridors in Spain, Portugal, and Greece, Turkey, which are rated by the 4 complementary European trial sites, Germany, France, and Netherlands, and Finland, and by our 2 Asian trial sites in China and Korea. We are going to use more than 24 automated vehicles around our trials. We're going to use an excess of 30 5G G-MOBIX that will be deployed for the purpose of this project, or its base stations that will be upgraded to conform with the needs of the project. And from most sites, what applies is that we will start from a non-standalone architecture. We're going to have our anchoring back to 4G networks, but are going to use a 5G G-MOBIX. And as the project evolves, we're going to move towards a standalone architecture where more developed 5G core will be deployed and used per case. And in some of our sites in Asia and also in the Netherlands, some standalone implementations will already be deployed since the first day of trials. But I'll show you some more information about that in just a while. Then I'd like to provide a little bit more information about our 2 main cross-border corridors, which is the focus of the project. So this is the situation in Spain and Portugal. We're basically going to connect Vigo to Porto, and as Francois also explained before, that enables us to have to perform tests both on highway environment as well as in a more suburban environment over bridges connecting the 2 cities. You see that the different coloring here represents the participation in different use case categories as presented by Edward. So 3 of these categories are going to be tackled in the Spain-Portugal corridor. And what you see here is the initial implementation we're going to have at the Spanish and Portuguese side. So you see on the left side the implementation in the Spanish side of the borders, where Telefonica network is being used using Nokia equipment. As I explained before, we're starting from a non-standalone architecture, using also a MEC, which will basically interconnect also the two countries, where we also have the capability for a GRX roaming international connection, as well as a local breakout between the 2 MECs on which the common ITS platform will be based. On the Portuguese side, we're again using Nokia equipment, which is good due to interoperability reasons and will enable us to move forward with this implementation in a much more efficient way, while using the NOS network on the Portuguese side. As I mentioned, also Spanish and Portuguese colleagues will starting from an NSA architecture for the original trials set to begin in April 2020, and in the next year and a half of the project, we'll slowly try to evolve towards a standalone implementation. Now, for the other cross-border corridor in Greece and Turkey, we'll have a slightly different setting as we're talking about hard borders and customs. However, this is also a very pressing matter for the European Commission, especially with all the Brexit talks in view. And this, as you can see on the top right-hand side of the figure, it's a regular problem that it's not an easy thing to do, to cross the borders. Very large lines, a lot of wasted time there, and the automation that can be offered by autonomous mobility can be heavily exploited. And this gives us the opportunity to test a couple of use case categories, as Edward mentioned before. What you see here is again the architecture we have in plan to implement other borders at the actual Ipsala-Kipi border crossing between the two countries. On this case, it's Ericsson implementation on both sides of the border, which again enables a much more effective implementation without too many interoperability issues. And on the Greek side, we have Cosmoten network that we're using, and on the Turkish side, the Turkcell network. Again, starting from an NSA implementation using Ericsson's distributed core to also implement MEC functionality alongside our more traditional cloud platform deployment. And as mentioned before, 5G G-MOBIX will be anchored for the beginning to the LTE MOBIX in the area, and later in the project we'll try to evolve towards a standalone architecture as well. Now, so those were the two cross-border corridors, but as mentioned before, this is not all we have. The local trial sites are heavily also contributing to our deployments. They will bring additional components in terms of software and some implementations to the MEC to our cross-border corridors. They're contributing specific software that is more easily developed in a local trial setting and tested, and then bringing to the cross-border aspects. And on this table, I wanted to present a small overview of what is going to be deployed in each of the cross-border corridors and the trial sites. So you see the different numbers of G-MOBIX, the different implementation, starting from NSA going to standalone. We're also going to have different implementations of MEC, which will allow us to also compare what is the most effective deployment in such a scenario. And we're going to try different roaming scenarios as well. And every cross-border corridor and trial site has some sort of additional information that's being investigated. For instance, the French side, the integration with satellite and the service that this can provide in such scenarios will be investigated. So, as mentioned, different kind of technologies are also going to be implemented in the different sites, trying to benchmark perhaps and compare results and see what will make the most efficient implementation for this type of cross-border scenarios. Now, in terms of IDS architecture, you can see here some sort of overview about how it all connects together. You see in the bottom layer that we have our vehicles being developed by our CCAM and OBU partners, the different implementation inside, and of course, they would communicate both with the roadside infrastructure deployed at its site and directly with the 5G network. And all of this would go, of course, to an application layer running in the cloud or the MEC, trying to exchange this type of information that is needed to enable this advanced CCAM functionality. This is kind of how it all comes together. We have different activities where each of these components is being developed and deployed, and of course the final stages of integration will take place at the actual cross-border sites. In terms of vehicles, as I mentioned before, we have a lot of different vehicles. So we have trucks, automated trucks from Ford, we have ALSA buses, we have then specific vehicles from multiple partners in their individual trial sites and the cross borders. And we also have different implementations of the OBUs that will be used in this case, allowing us to test a variety of solutions and to see whether any of those have some additional advantages over some others for this type of scenarios. Now, I think moving on to my last slide, what might be of interest is where we are at this moment and how we're going to move forward. So you can see here our plan until the end of the second year of the project. Right now, we're in month 11 of the project, and most of our efforts have gone into defining in detail our use cases, the synergies between the trial sites and the cross-border corridors, doing our deployment plans and our development plans, and basically having our architectures both for the 5G networks and the IDS infrastructure ready to go. In this last phase since July, our first phase of development and procurement has begun, where we try to instantiate our plans by ordering all the necessary equipment and beginning the development of the necessary software. A major milestone for us will be in October, where all of our documentation is going to be available, detailing our plans for the 5G networks that we're going to set up, for the IDS infrastructure that we're going to set up, and for the vehicles we're going to deploy, how this is all going to be integrated, to have our methodology plan ready. All of this will be ready by next month, which will allow us to go to the next 6 months of what we call phase 2 and phase 3 of development and rollout, where we will basically bring these plans into live, take it to the actual cross-border, implement it, integrate it, test it, and make sure that we reach our next large milestone, which is on month 18, as I mentioned, April 2020, which means that we're going to have our test trials and our corridors ready to go, so we can begin our trials. From this point onwards, we're going to go into a phased trialing at end, where the first 3 months, of course, is going to be some trial and errors or some initial tests. We're going to verify the readiness of our trials and cross borders. So we can use basically the next year and a half is going to be full of trialing and testing and going back, so we can get more and more measurements, more KPIs, and progress the most efficient solutions. I've only presented the plan until month 24, as this is a little bit more concrete, but of course until the end of the project, and since the trial sites and cross borders will be ready, we have a lot of trialing in our future, where the different cross border issues will be evaluated. This is it from me. Thanks so much for your attention, and I'll give the floor back to Kelly to moderate perhaps the questions section.
Thank you, Kostas.
Yes, I think we have some time for a couple of questions, but I cannot see if there are any. Kelly, can you see if there are any questions? I can only see the chat between the panelists and the presenters, but I cannot see any chat messages from the attendees. Do we have any questions?
Vasilis, let me check. One moment.
I do not see any question on the 5G-MOBIX application. Thank you very much to the speaker first. And Vasilis, do you want to show your screen now? Or?
I don't have anything to share. I just also want to thank the presenters, and I just want to say to the attendees that soon enough they're going to get another invitation for our second webinar, which will focus mainly on what has been done in the phase 1 that Kostas just presented, and the actual developments and the early deployments that we have done, and how we're going to proceed from there to the final rollout of the whole project. So, Kelly, do we have any more questions, or we should close this first webinar here?
No, Vasilis, we haven't any questions. I would like to thank all of you for joining us today on behalf of 5G-MOBIX and our presenters. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you again.